Only families live here. Useless sponsors can get out. I calmly accepted those words. Finally, it was worth enduring for 18 years. At that moment, two men in suits entered from behind me. What? My name is Patricia. I am 74 years old this year. I live with my only son, Walter, my daughter-in-law, Shirley, and their son, Milford, making it a household of 4 people across 2 generations. To the outside world, it may seem like we live a lively life in a multi-generational household, but since the loss of my husband, I often feel lonely and tend to get down. Walter is quiet-natured, gentle, and avoids conflicts. In contrast, my daughter-in-law Shirley is strong-willed and quick to complain if something displeases her. Milford seems busy with his job, rarely at home on weekdays or weekends. Shirley is especially harsh towards me, throwing cruel words my way. As a timid person, her words sting like little thorns, making me shrink. I've never reproached Shirley. Instead, I'm often on the receiving end of her nitpicking. As a result, I often find myself complying with Shirley, feeling like her housekeeper. Shirley is stingy with money, but also vain, often going out to lunch in the city center with friends. She always asks me to do chores like cleaning and laundry when she goes out. Moreover, when heading to the city center, she makes me drive her to the station. Shirley naturally gets into the back seat, as if I were a taxi driver. And she seems to misunderstand that living together in this 2-generation household is her way of repaying me. Shirley often says, "I'm living here for your sake. After my husband's death, I wanted to live quietly alone." However, I couldn't express this wish to Shirley or Walter. "Come on, get up quickly." It seems like she's waking up Walter, who was working late last night. Shirley's grating voice echoes from the couple's bedroom. As usual, she's in a bad mood today. Waking up Walter at the same time on a holiday and hurrying him to get ready. I spoke to Walter, who was washing his face in the bathroom. "Are you okay?" Walter had big bags under his eyes. "I'm fine. Got about 5 hours of sleep." Walter smiled gently while drying his face with a towel. Lately, Walter's complexion has been particularly poor. His father, unconcerned about the family's worries, kept saying, "I'm fine," and continued working. One day, he suddenly collapsed and passed away. I knew all too well that "I'm fine" is a danger signal. Fine is not fine at all. As Walter washed his face, memories of that time came back, and my chest tightened. I wish I could let him rest more on holidays, but I doubt I can say that to Shirley. Loud footsteps come from upstairs. The way of walking conveys her bad mood. It must be Shirley. As I show my displeasure, Shirley appears in the bathroom. Her brows are furrowed, not bothering to hide her dissatisfaction. "Hurry up! I'm going to be late for my appointment with friends." Walter, with a downcast look, put the towel back. "Sorry, I'll get dressed right away." The meek Walter quickly left the scene. Shirley thrust a note at me. "Patricia, here. This is the shopping list. Get these." Shirley pushes the note into my hands without looking me in the eye. "Yes, I understand. Have fun with your friends." I forced a smile as best as I could. Shirley hands me the note, but no money. The payment comes out of my pension. Shirley adds more requests as she leaves, not waiting for my reply. I sigh heavily. Watch her brazen back disappear. As Shirley was leaving, she called out loudly from the entrance, "Make sure you clean the shower so I can use it when I get back." The door closed, and she left. Ever since we started living together, Shirley has never been shy around us. When we first moved in together, "Don't hold back. I said to Shirley. It seemed to have been completely unnecessary. The longer we lived together, the more Shirley's aggressive nature became apparent. Her true colors were showing. Shirley is not good at household chores, especially cooking. I ended up preparing all the meals, including Milford's lunch. Additionally, Shirley is picky about food. If she dislikes a dish, she would say, "I told you I can't eat this," and leave the table. She often complains about other chores too. Stains on the laundry, missed spots on the window glass, no spare toilet paper, no stock of her favorite juice. She scatters complaints at me all day. I keep telling myself that she's the woman my only son Walter chose. I always try to respond with a smile and keep things calm. However, Shirley's recent behavior has become even more thoughtless and exhausting. Shirley goes out with friends almost every week. She hardly did any housework or childcare from the beginning of her marriage. She spent money on her appearance and was attentive to it. Shirley is cheerful and glamorous when outside. She seems popular with men, often receiving calls from men I don't know. I suspected Shirley of infidelity, but Walter seems to trust Shirley unconditionally. Whenever I warn him, "I'll handle it," he gives an unreliable reply. A while after Shirley and Walter went out, Walter returned. He had been called to drive Shirley to the station. Walter came in holding several shopping bags. Seeing my surprised face, Walter sighed. "These are sweets Shirley is going to give out at her high school reunion next week." "But there are so many." "Apparently, there are more in the car. Meant for everyone at the reunion. They're from a famous Western confectionery shop. It must have cost a considerable amount." Walter muttered as if he understood. Shirley has her own status to maintain. She doesn't want to be seen as struggling financially, living with her parents-in-law. Sorry. Let her have her way, please. After bringing the bags inside, Walter slumped on the sofa. I decided to go shopping as Shirley had asked. I could use the car as I can drive. However, Shirley always complains the cost of gas is a waste, so I often endure and walk for most errands. The walk back with heavy bags always feels long, taking several breaks on the way home. During the walk, I heard Milford's voice. "Granny, let me carry that for you." Turning around, Milford was standing there and took the shopping bags from my hands. Milford looked stern. "Why didn't you use the car? Did Mom complain about the gas money?" I just smiled without answering. Since Milford started working last spring, we hardly see each other at home. Milford comes home late and leaves early in the morning. He often works on weekends, and when he has a day off, he goes out, so he's rarely at home. It's rare for Milford to be at home like today. Milford started putting away the groceries in the kitchen quickly. His movements were lively and full of happiness. As I was helping in the kitchen, Milford shyly spoke to me. "Actually, there's someone I want you to meet." I was filled with emotion, realizing he had grown up so much. It seemed like just a little while ago he was a young child. And now, he's talking about introducing someone special. I'm thinking of bringing them home next week. While storing vegetables in the fridge, Milford talked, seemingly embarrassed. "Granny, I've been thinking about something for a while now." I wondered what was on Milford's mind. Before I could probe further, Milford, with an air of excitement, continued. "I can't talk about it yet, but I'm going to bring her over to the house." I couldn't help but smile at his words. I was curious about what Milford couldn't talk about. But what really intrigued me was which lady Milford would bring home. Perhaps his days off were spent on dates. The thought was quite heartwarming. It would be the first time Milford brought a woman home. That day, I was in such high spirits that even Shirley's usual nagging didn't bother me as I went about my chores. That evening, Milford talked about the woman he wanted to introduce to Shirley and Walter. Walter seemed pleased, but Shirley, without a smile, frowned in displeasure. Stealing a glance at Shirley's expression, I felt a sense of foreboding. The next day off, while I was cleaning the entrance, Milford appeared. Beside him stood a pale, demure young woman. "Granny, this is Anastasia." Milford introduced her to me, a joyful expression on his face. "Nice to meet you. I'm Anastasia." Anastasia bowed politely. Her greeting was beautiful. She seemed very well mannered. Her parents must have raised her right. I led the two of them to the living room. To my surprise, Shirley seemed in good spirits, asking them how they met. I was in the kitchen preparing coffee, comforted by the sound of Shirley's laughter. Shirley's urging me to hurry with the coffee didn't bother me. Just as I was about to bring in the coffee, I heard Shirley's critical tone. Anastasia's face had turned pale. What had happened? "Don't joke. What's this about a shotgun marriage?" So it was true. Anastasia was carrying Milford's child, and they were planning to marry. Shirley was opposing it. I, too, was taken aback. Moments ago, the atmosphere was amiable, but now it was icy. Milford looked down, biting his lip. Milford pleaded in a strained voice. "We're serious about this. We may be young, but please allow us to marry." Anastasia joined in, begging, "Please." Their earnestness was palpable. I wanted to support them, but I knew Shirley would oppose if I said anything. Yet I wanted to stand by them. I struggled to hold back my tears. Walter spoke up. "Of course we support your marriage. For the baby's sake. It's better to marry soon." Milford's face brightened. "Thank you, Dad." Milford and Anastasia exchanged smiles. Shirley looked openly displeased. "A shotgun marriage? How unsightly. Explain yourself properly." Anastasia, at a loss for words, glanced down at the table. Milford gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "We were in a serious relationship thinking of marriage. The baby was a happy coincidence for us. A child doesn't force a marriage. Isn't that right, Patricia?" Shirley turned to me with a sarcastic smile. "But if they've decided, all we can do is support them." Shirley remained silent, then left the room. An awkward silence filled the living room. Walter stood up, patting Milford's shoulder. "Shirley will understand. I'll talk to her." Milford nodded slightly. I was clueless about what Shirley was thinking, feeling increasingly anxious. The next day, Walter dropped a bombshell on me. "Patricia should move out. From now on, it will just be us and Milford's family living here as a two-family household," she said to him. Shirley also said, "Don't tell Patricia." Walter told me what Shirley had said. I was dumbstruck and silent, holding my head. What shocked me further was the fact that Shirley was managing all of my late husband's estate, including the house. The entire estate had been left to Walter, and Walter, he just does whatever Shirley says. That meant Shirley had control over all our family's assets. I realized I had been stripped of everything by Shirley. I had no assets or property of my own. Shirley even started harassing me. She would turn off the water heater right when I was about to shower. I had no choice but to endure cold showers. There were times when the washing machine was unplugged and I had to wash clothes by hand. It was all to drive me out. The harassment gradually escalated. I knew I had to confront Shirley to protect myself. Fortunately, I had a few tricks up my sleeve. I decided to plan my next steps in consultation with Walter, but dealing with Shirley wouldn't be easy. Will it work? The weeks since I decided to confront her flew by. When things had calmed down a bit, Shirley called Milford and Anastasia. Milford and Anastasia sat at the living room table, looking uneasy. Shirley, seated opposite them, had a calm expression. Once everyone was gathered, I expected Shirley to deliver my death sentence. Shirley finished her coffee in one gulp, crossed her arms, and said, "Well, I suppose it's pointless to oppose, but when exactly are you planning to get married?" Everyone was stunned by Shirley's change of heart. "We want to do it soon," considering Anastasia's condition. Shirley's composure was almost frightening. "So this means we're finally done with parenting, doesn't it?" Shirley turned to face me in the kitchen and shouted, "We're going to live as a family. Unneeded sponsors, get out." I calmly received her words. Finally, it was worth enduring these 18 years. Then 2 men in suits entered from behind me. What? The story goes back 2 weeks. I was invited to Anastasia's condominium where she lives alone. Milford was also there. They probably visit each other's home frequently. In the bathroom, their matching toothbrushes were lined up, which was endearing. Anastasia's belly was slightly bulging, and she was gently caressing it. Milford, seating me at the dining table, with a serious look, said, "There's something important I need to discuss." A conversation you don't want Shirley to overhear, right? Milford silently nodded, a slight smile on his face. Anastasia also smiled thinly, looking pleased. Milford offered me the coffee he had brewed and continued, "Why don't you live with us? Dad told me that Mom is trying to kick you out." I was taken aback by his sudden proposal. I almost dropped the mug I was holding. Milford looked at me seriously. "But I can't rely on you." Milford's expression remained serious. Anastasia held Milford's hand, as if to encompass it. Milford was earnest about wanting me to live with them. I straightened up involuntarily. "I've always thought about it since I was a child. Granny, you were always treated badly by Mom. I couldn't stand it." Indeed, Shirley is strong-willed and assertive. "Dad never talks back. I can't just watch Granny being mistreated by Mom." "I'm fine. Thank you for worrying. Remember when I first said I wanted to introduce Anastasia to you, Granny?" I remember the day Milford said he wanted to introduce Anastasia. It was a determined statement that stuck in my mind, but I had forgotten it until now. "It was something you've been thinking about for a long time." I always thought I wanted to help Granny when I grew up. So Milford had been thinking about that. I felt tears welling up. "Mom is always cold and rude to Granny, making snide remarks, but kicking you out? That's just too cruel." Milford was, it turns out, really that concerned about me. He leaned forward, staring into my eyes. "Come live with us. There's no need for Granny to suffer alone in that house." When I didn't respond, Anastasia looked at me with a serious expression. "I heard about Granny from Milford. Please, come live with us. I'm so touched, really touched, but I don't want to be a burden on your lives." "That's not a problem at all. We need your experience in parenting, and it would be so reassuring to have you with us." Milford and Anastasia then said, "Please come live with us," asking together. Tears welled up in my eyes from their sincere feelings and kindness towards me. "Thank you. I understand your feelings. I will live with you." "No, please, let me live with you," I asked earnestly. And so it was settled that I would live with Milford and Anastasia. I braced myself for the final battle with Shirley. Leaving Milford's condo, I felt relieved knowing that even if Shirley kicked me out, I had a place to go. My arsenal wasn't just that. Standing behind Shirley now were two men, a dignified older gentleman and a tall young man, both on my side. Just now, finally, it was worth enduring for 18 years, I said. Shirley stood dumbfounded, as if deflated. This man here is the landlord, a childhood friend of my late husband. The dignified man nodded in greeting. This land is actually leased. I explained that the condition for renting it was that I lived here. Everyone looked puzzled. I recounted how the landlord and my husband had argued over who would marry me. Ultimately, my husband chose me. The landlord, wanting to see me, lent the place on the condition that my husband and I continued living here. I explained it all in order. Ever since then, I've been living here. Wow, Granny, you were really cherished. The landlord blushed. Shirley, unable to speak, trembled her lips. So, everyone has to leave here, right? That's right. Shirley, for the 18 years we've lived together, I've always endured. But now, it's over. That's absurd. What about the tenant's right to stay? You can't just tell us to leave. Shirley argued vehemently. Normally, yes, but I've discussed it and chosen to terminate the lease myself. Shirley clenched her fist, her face turning red. I've lived here a long time, but it's time for me to move on. I'm going to live with Milford and the others. Unbelievable! I won't allow this. Shirley exploded in anger. Who's being ridiculous? Your obvious disdain for Anastasia's pregnancy, your harassment towards me, your attitude towards Walter? You've been awful. Shirley slammed her hands on the table. Shirley, let's get a divorce. Walter spoke seriously to Shirley. She stood, mouth agape, losing momentum. I can't stand living with Shirley anymore. I want a divorce. What's all this about? Right now, the problem is that this house is gone and Patricia is going to live with Milford. Mother, we will live with Milford and Anastasia. That's settled. Now, it's about me and Shirley. I don't want to live with her anymore. Shirley, usually submissive, was taken aback by Walter's sudden change. Why is this happening all of a sudden? Until now, Mother has endured Shirley's attitude. So, I endured too. But if Mother is leaving to live with Milford, there's no need to bear it anymore. I want to divorce Shirley. A tall man standing behind stepped forward, holding an envelope. This man is a detective. He's been investigating you for years. Walter opened the envelope, spreading its contents on the table. Shirley's face turned pale at the sight. Inside were photos and documents. The photos showed Shirley arm in arm with a young man she didn't know entering a hotel. Shirley was seen coming out of a nightclub in a photo. This is proof that Shirley was having an affair. I've been having her investigated regularly for quite some time. Lies. No, this is a misunderstanding. It doesn't matter if it's a misunderstanding or not. The investigation is conclusive. Shirley, you've been using household money for a young man. Walter handed Shirley a copy of the bank transfer details. I was amazed at how thorough Walter had been. How far had he investigated? Perhaps the most frightening enemy is Walter himself. His gentle face only made his relentless pursuit all the more intimidating. Shirley, either resigned or defiant, began to smirk. Well, it was for his future career as a singer. It's fine to support that, right? Walter shook his head and sighed. Then what about this photo? The photo showed the young man Shirley had been with entering a condominium with another woman. Shirley stared at the photo, shocked. Her hands trembled slightly. That man's been spending the money Shirley gave him on his own pleasures. Walter pulled out a digital voice recorder from the envelope. Here's a recording of him saying Shirley is an easy mark. Shirley, overwhelmed, held her head and closed her eyes tightly. Then she said, "Lies, lies, 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 lies," she murmured repeatedly. Shirley, you were being deceived too, but that's no excuse. Shirley looked around at everyone with wide eyes. What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to live? That's for you to figure out. You have plenty of time to atone for your sins. I can't take this anymore. This life. Walter, usually quiet, raised his voice, causing Shirley to flinch and tear up. He stood up from his chair and glared at Shirley. I can't continue with Shirley anymore. Not just her attitude towards me, but everything she's done to my mother. Walter had been enduring for years. He was quiet, but vindictive. And a hard worker. Walter had been planning his revenge on Shirley for years. She had been under investigation for almost a decade. Now, Shirley was thoroughly defeated. She was speechless and collapsed onto the floor from her chair. Walter left the house without another word, followed by the landlord and the detective. No, Walter, come back! I'm sorry! Shirley kept crying incessantly. I urged Milford and Anastasia to leave the house. Shirley, left alone, was engulfed in deep regret and despair for her irreversible actions. Later, Shirley and Walter got divorced. Shirley strongly opposed it, leading to mediation. However, with all the evidence gathered, Shirley ended up paying a significant amount of compensation. Shirley demanded a share of the property, but she was confronted with the amount she had spent on the young man. Instead of compensating for the embezzlement, Shirley had to reluctantly give up her claim to the property. It was nothing but her own responsibility. Shirley, now homeless and burdened with debts, had to pay the compensation. She had accumulated a large amount of debt. Shirley now lived in a dilapidated apartment in a desolate suburban area. She worked tirelessly day and night in a factory during the day and as a security guard for road construction at night. She continued to demand money from the young man she had given money to. "Give me back my money!" and was warned for stalking. Despite the warning, she didn't stop her stalker behavior and could be arrested for threats. Walter continued to have her investigated, even after the divorce, receiving regular reports. Walter's vindictiveness was daunting. It had been half a year since I started living with Milford and Anastasia. Anastasia had given birth to a girl. I was helping with childcare and housework. Busy days, but I felt happy every day. One day, Walter came to visit. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he looked well and energetic. Walter, holding his grandchild, was brimming with smiles. "Since the divorce, have you been able to sleep well?" "Thanks to you, I think I've been getting about 8 hours." Walter showed a brightness I had never seen before. "I have some good news today." "What is it, some good news?" Anastasia's eyes sparkled. "I bought the land where we all used to live." I was surprised. "Really?" "I talked to the landlord and got it for a good price. I used Father's insurance money, which I had hidden from Shirley. Apparently, he was hiding everything so Shirley wouldn't find it. It turns out the condition for selling it was that Mother would live with us. Let's all live there together, Milford and Anastasia." I pinched my cheek involuntarily. Ouch! It's not a dream. Milford and Anastasia were laughing. Thinking about our upcoming lively and happy life, I couldn't help but smile.